I donated my kidney to my son. That's what any parent would do for their child, right? But I never imagined the secret behind it was a plan carefully constructed over months. 3 days after surgery, he showed up with a stack of papers, evicting me from my own home. The emotional pain cut deeper than any surgical wound. Suddenly, a doctor burst into the room with fury written across her face and said something that made my son's face go white. What she revealed next would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family and save me from a betrayal I never saw coming. Before I tell you what the doctor said, drop a comment. Would you ever donate an organ to your child? I need to know I'm not the only fool who trusted blindly. I woke up to the sound of machines beeping. For a moment I didn't know where I was. The ceiling above me was white and stained. Fluorescent lights buzzed. Everything smelled sharp and chemical like bleach mixed with metal. It burned my throat. Then the pain hit. It started as a dull ache in my left side, then exploded into fire. Like someone pressed a poker directly against my ribs. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My arms felt like wet concrete. I turned my head slowly. To my right, a machine beeped in steady rhythm. Green lines danced across a black screen. An IV drip hung from a metal pole. To my left, a window. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes. Chicago in December. The world looked frozen and far away. I was in the ICU, Northwestern Memorial Hospital. It came back in pieces. The surgery, the consent forms, the anesthesiologist counting backwards, and Caleb, my son, holding my hand as they wheeled me in. I remembered his face, pale, eyes red from crying, his hand squeezing mine. "Dad," he had whispered, "you're saving my life." I swallowed. My mouth tasted like metal. A thin blanket covered me, but I was cold. I looked down. Beneath the hospital gown, I could see the edge of a bandage. White gauze wrapped around my torso. Underneath, a 9-inch scar ran across my left side, the place where they had taken my kidney. My kidney for Caleb. Because my son was dying. Kidney failure, stage 4. He needed a transplant, and I was a match. A perfect match. What kind of father would I be if I said no? I pressed the call button. My fingers shook. A minute later, the door opened. A woman in blue scrubs walked in. Older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back. Her name tag read Carol Anderson N. "Mr. Morrison," she said softly. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" "Like someone cut me open," I said. My voice came out rough. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's normal. You just came out of surgery yesterday. The pain will get better." Yesterday. I had lost a whole day. "Where's Caleb?" I asked. "Where's my son?" Something flickered across her face, just for a second. Then it was gone. "Your son is recovering on another floor, Mr. Morrison," she said. She checked the IV, adjusted the blanket. She wouldn't look at me. "He's doing fine. Can I see him?" "Not yet. You need to rest." I nodded. That made sense. We had both just had major surgery. Of course they would keep us separate for now. Caleb was okay. That was all that mattered. I thought about the last 5 years. How empty the house had felt after Penelope passed away. How quiet. I had called Caleb so many times, but he was always busy, always somewhere else. Until 2 weeks ago, when he showed up at my door, pale and shaking, telling me he was sick, that he needed me. And I had said yes, without hesitation, because that's what fathers do. I looked down at the bandage, at the place where part of me was missing. It hurt, but it was worth it. My son would live. That was all that mattered. But when I looked up, Nurse Carol was still by the door, watching me, and the look on her face wasn't relief. It was something else. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it, shook her head, and walked out. I stared at the closed door. Something felt wrong. The way she looked at me, like she knew something I didn't, like she pitied me. But why? Outside, the snow kept falling, the machines kept beeping, and somewhere in this hospital, my son was recovering. At least that's what I told myself. 2 days passed like slow torture. The first day blurred into the second. Doctors came and went. Nurses checked my vitals. Everyone smiled and repeated the same line. "Your son is doing fine, Mr. Morrison. He's resting." I asked everyone who entered the room, the young doctor with tired eyes, the nurse who brought water, even the orderly who emptied the trash. Where was Caleb? When could I see him? The answer never changed. He's fine. He's resting. Soon. But soon never came. The pain in my side became familiar, a dull throb that sharpened when I moved. By the second morning, they had me sitting up, then standing. A physical therapist with a clipboard told me to take 3 steps. I did. Each one felt like walking on broken glass. I didn't care about the pain. I only wanted to see my son. The ICU was unnaturally quiet at night. Too quiet. I lay awake listening to machines hum and beep, watching snow drift past the window. Chicago looked beautiful this time of year, white and clean but bitterly cold. I thought about Penelope. My wife had died 5 years earlier. Since then, the house had felt too big, too empty. I used to sit at the kitchen table and stare at her chair, waiting for her to walk in with coffee and that smile that made everything feel safe. She never did. After she died, Caleb pulled away. He stopped calling, stopped visiting. I told myself he was grieving, that he needed space. Space became months. Months became years. Until 2 weeks ago. He showed up at my door crying, saying he was dying, saying he needed me. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt needed again. On the second afternoon, they moved me out of the ICU to a regular room on the 4th floor. Smaller, quieter, a single bed by the window. The view was unchanged, snow-gray sky, a city wrapped in winter. Nurse Carol came in around 3. She helped me into a chair by the window. Her hands were gentle, but her face carried the same troubled look, like she knew something she didn't want to say. Nurse Carol, I asked, when can I see Caleb? She hesitated, eyes dropping to her hands. Your son will visit you tomorrow, Mr. Morrison. Tomorrow. Relief loosened my chest. Thank you, I said. She nodded, but didn't smile. She turned toward the door, paused, and for a moment I thought she would warn me, explain that look in her eyes. She didn't. She left. I sat by the window as evening fell, watching Chicago's lights flicker on. Christmas lights blinked in the distance, red, green, gold. The world was preparing for the holidays, families gathering. Tomorrow I would see my son. Tomorrow I would hold him and tell him I loved him, tell him it was all worth it. I smiled for the first time since waking up. Tomorrow. I had no idea tomorrow would destroy everything. The third day arrived with gray skies and heavy snow. I had been awake since dawn, watching the window, waiting. The nurses brought breakfast, but I couldn't eat. My stomach was tied in knots, not from pain, from anticipation. Today I would see Caleb. I sat in the chair by the window, hands folded in my lap. I had practiced what I would say. How I would tell him the pain didn't matter, that I would do it again in a heartbeat, because that's what fathers do. The clock on the wall ticked past 10, then 11, then noon. Finally, just after 12, the door opened, and Caleb walked in. For a second, my heart lifted. I tried to stand, reaching for him. Caleb, but he didn't move toward me. He stood in the doorway, hands in the pockets of a crisp black suit. His hair was styled. His shoes were polished. He looked like he was heading to a business meeting, not like someone who had just survived major surgery. I looked at his torso, his chest, his side, waiting to see the bandage. There was nothing. Where's your bandage? I asked. He didn't answer, just looked at me with eyes that were cold, empty. Then I saw them. 2 people stepped into the room behind him. A woman in a dark suit, late 30s, carrying a black leather briefcase, and a younger woman with blonde hair scrolling on her phone. Caleb, I said slowly, who are these people? The woman in the suit stepped forward. Her smile was professional, sharp. Mr. Morrison, my name is Claire Montgomery. I'm your son's attorney. Attorney. The word hit me like a slap. Attorney, I repeated. Why? Claire reached into her briefcase and pulled out a large envelope. She placed it on the bed beside me. This is an eviction notice, Mr. Morrison. I stared at the envelope, then at her, then at Caleb. I don't understand. You signed ownership of your home over to your son before the surgery, Claire said calmly. The property now belongs to him. The words didn't make sense. No, I said. Those were medical consent forms. Read the fine print, Dad, Caleb said. His voice was flat, emotionless. I looked down at the envelope. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't open it. Caleb, I whispered, what's happening? You're being moved to Sunrise Senior Living, he said. It's a care facility. I've already paid for 6 months. A care facility. He was putting me in a nursing home. I felt something break inside me, not loudly, quietly, like ice cracking under weight. But I gave you my kidney, I said. My voice was barely audible. I saved your life. Caleb tilted his head, and for the first time I saw something flicker in his eyes. Amusement. What about your surgery? I asked. What about your kidney? He smiled. It wasn't warm, it wasn't kind. There was no surgery for me, Dad. The room tilted. The walls closed in. I couldn't breathe. What? I was never sick. The blonde woman behind him, Tiffany, finally looked up from her phone. She smirked. I stared at Caleb, at the son I had raised, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the man I had just given part of my body to save, and all I saw was a stranger. Why, I whispered. He shrugged. Because I could. My chest felt hollow, like someone had reached in and scooped out everything that mattered. My kidney, my home, my son. All gone. Claire cleared her throat. Mr. Morrison, I suggest you review the documents. She handed me a business card. I didn't take it. It fell to the floor. Caleb turned to leave. Tiffany followed still on her phone. Claire snapped her briefcase shut. And just like that, they were walking out. I opened my mouth to say something, to scream, to beg, but no sound came out. Before the door could close, it slammed open again. A woman stormed in. She was wearing a white coat over blue scrubs. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face was full of fury. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking straight at Caleb. "Stop right there," she said. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. Caleb froze, and for the first time since he walked in, I saw fear flash across his face. The woman who entered looked furious enough to stop a heart. She stood in the doorway, white coat billowing. Her dark eyes locked onto Caleb with intensity that made grown men confess. "I'm Dr. Rebecca Stone," she said, "head of transplant surgery at this hospital." Caleb straightened his shoulders, smoothed his suit jacket. "Doctor, this is a private family matter. Organ trafficking is never private, Mr. Morrison." The words hung in the air like smoke. I didn't understand. I looked at Dr. Stone, then at Caleb. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Dr. Stone's expression softened when she turned to me, but only slightly. "Your son was never sick, Mr. Morrison." The words didn't register at first. They bounced off my brain like stones off water. "What? He faked his medical records." I shook my head. "No, the tests. The doctor said he had kidney failure." "Those doctors were paid," Dr. Stone said. "The records were fabricated." I looked at Caleb, waiting for him to deny it. He said nothing. "But I saw the tests," I whispered. "You saw forged documents." My hands gripped the armrests. My knuckles went white. "Then where is my kidney?" Dr. Stone didn't hesitate. "It was transplanted into another patient. Jonathan Langford, a man who was actually dying." The name meant nothing to me, but the way she said it made my stomach turn. Caleb finally spoke. "This is ridiculous." "Is it?" Dr. Stone pulled a tablet from under her coat. "There's no record of you ever being admitted here, Mr. Morrison. No blood work. No dialysis appointments." She turned the screen toward him. "Nothing." Caleb's face went pale. Claire stepped forward. "Dr. Stone, I don't think—" "Your client committed fraud," Dr. Stone said. "Against his own father, against this hospital, against federal law." I couldn't breathe. The room was shrinking. "What?" I whispered. Dr. Stone looked at me, and for the first time I saw pity in her eyes. "Money, Mr. Morrison. Your son sold your kidney for $500,000. $500,000. The number was too big, too impossible." I looked at Caleb. "Is that true?" He didn't answer, just stared at the floor. "Caleb," I said, my voice cracked, "is it true?" Still nothing. Dr. Stone crossed her arms. "Mr. Langford's family arranged a private transaction. They were told the donor was your son, a young man willing to help a stranger. They paid accordingly." "But it wasn't him," I said. "No, it was you." I felt the room tilt. My hands went numb. "And he took the money." "Every cent." I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had trusted with my life. "Why?" I asked again. Caleb finally looked up. His eyes were cold, empty. "Because I could." It wasn't an explanation, it was a dismissal. Those 3 words hit me harder than anything else. Harder than the eviction notice, harder than learning there was no surgery, harder than the $500,000. Because I could. That was all I was worth to him, an opportunity. Dr. Stone's jaw tightened. "Mr. Morrison, I suggest you stay where you are." "I'm leaving," Caleb said. He moved toward the door. "No, you're not." Caleb ignored her. He grabbed the door handle. Dr. Stone didn't move, didn't chase him. She just stood there with her arms crossed and smiled. It was a small smile, cold, confident. "Go ahead," she said quietly. "Try." Caleb pulled the door open and froze, because standing in the hallway were 2 men in uniform. Caleb took a step back. His face went white. Dr. Stone's voice was calm, almost gentle. "I made a call before I walked into this room, Mr. Morrison. Did you really think I'd let you just walk away?" Everything happened so fast. The 2 officers stepped into the room. The taller one, Officer Walsh, had gray hair and calm eyes. The younger one, Officer Cooper, was broader, with a radio clipped to his belt. Caleb backed away from the door. "Let me go," he said. His voice was shaking now. "This is a misunderstanding." "Caleb Morrison," Officer Walsh said. His tone was professional, final. "You're under arrest." Officer Cooper stepped forward. He pulled out a pair of restraints. "Turn around, sir." Caleb looked at Claire, at Tiffany, at Dr. Stone, looking for help, for a way out. There was none. "Turn around," Officer Cooper repeated. Caleb did. Slowly. His hands shook as they were pulled behind his back. I heard the click of metal, saw the restraints close around his wrists. He turned his head, looked at me. "Dad," he said, his voice cracked. "I can explain." I looked at him, at the son I had raised, at the man who had just sold my kidney for $500,000, and I turned away. I didn't say a word. I just looked out the window, at the snow falling on Chicago, at the world moving on without me. Officer Walsh took Caleb by the arm, led him toward the door. Tiffany followed, still scrolling on her phone. Claire snapped her briefcase shut and walked out behind them. And just like that, they were gone. The door closed. The room went silent. I sat there, staring at the empty space where my son had stood. Dr. Stone pulled a chair over and sat down beside me. "I'm sorry you had to learn this way, Mr. Morrison," she said softly. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "How much did you say?" I finally asked. My voice was hoarse. $500,000. I nodded slowly, like the number made sense, like anything made sense. Dr. Stone was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. "Mr. Langford doesn't know the full truth yet, but he will, and I believe he'll want to meet you." "I don't want to meet anyone," I said. She reached into her coat and pulled out a card. She placed it on the table beside my bed. "When you're ready." She stood to leave. At the door she paused. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "you saved a man's life today, whether you meant to or not. That matters." Then she was gone too. I sat alone in the empty room. The machines beeped. The snow fell. And somewhere in this city, my son was being taken away. I looked at the door, at the space where Caleb had stood, and I realized something. I had lost him long before today, long before the surgery, long before he showed up crying at my door 2 weeks ago. I just hadn't known it. 2 days later, a stranger walked into my room. He was wearing an expensive suit. His face was thin pale, but his eyes were clear, alive. He stood at the foot of my bed and said 3 words that would change everything. "You saved me." I knew who he was before he even spoke. Everyone in Chicago knew Jonathan Langford, tech billionaire, philanthropist, the man whose company employed half the city, and the man who now had my kidney. He looked thinner than in the photographs. His face was pale, his movements careful, but his eyes were sharp and sincere. Behind him stood a younger man in a dark coat, Walter Mason. I would learn later, quiet and watchful. "Mr. Morrison," Jonathan said, "may I sit?" I nodded. He lowered himself slowly into the chair beside my bed, moving like someone who understood pain. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I thought the donor was your son," Jonathan said finally, "a young man who wanted to help anonymously." I looked away. My son only wanted to help himself. Jonathan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. When Dr. Stone told me the truth, I was horrified. Silence settled between us. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky was pale and clear. "I've been sick for 2 years," Jonathan said quietly. "My grandchildren thought I was dying. My doctors said I had months, maybe less." He paused. "You saved my life, Mr. Morrison, whether you meant to or not." "I didn't mean to save anyone," I said. "But you did?" I didn't know what to say to that. Jonathan leaned forward slightly. "I know you don't have a home to go back to, but I do, and my grandchildren need a tutor. Someone patient. Someone who knows what it means to teach." I stiffened. "I don't want charity, Mr. Langford." "This isn't charity," he said firmly. "This is gratitude, and maybe a second chance, for both of us." I studied him. This man didn't owe me anything. I hadn't chosen to save him. I'd been lied to, manipulated, used. But here he sat, offering me something I hadn't even known I needed. A place, a purpose. Walter stepped forward and placed a business card on the table beside my bed. "When you're ready, Mr. Morrison." Jonathan stood slowly, wincing slightly. "Think about it. You don't have to decide today. But I think we both knew I already had." I looked at this man, a stranger who owed me nothing and everything, and for the first time in 5 days, I felt something other than betrayal. I felt possibility. "I'll think about it," I said. Jonathan smiled. "That's all I ask." He left quietly, Walter following behind. The room felt warmer somehow. brighter. I picked up the business card. It was simple, elegant, just a name, a number, and an address on the shore of Lake Michigan. I didn't know it then, but that decision would save me. Not from poverty, but from loneliness. 2 weeks later, I was living in a house that wasn't mine, recovering from surgery that saved a stranger. The Langford estate sat along the Gold Coast with windows that looked out over Lake Michigan. The water was gray and restless, still half frozen. I spent most mornings walking slowly through the gardens, testing my strength, feeling the scar pull with every step. That afternoon, Walter found me by the window. "Detective Brooks is here to see you, Mr. Morrison." I nodded. I'd been expecting this. Samuel Brooks was in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. He carried a folder under his arm and moved like a man who'd seen too many families destroy themselves. Jonathan appeared briefly in the doorway, shook Brooks's hand, then left us alone. Brooks sat across from me and opened the folder. "We're building a case against your son, Mr. Morrison," he said quietly. "I need to walk you through some of the evidence." He slid a printed text message across the table. "Caleb to Tiffany. The old man will never know. Easiest money I've ever made." I stared at the words. They blurred. Brooks continued. "We have a timeline showing your son began planning this 6 months ago. Falsified medical records. Bribed a clinic technician to fake test results. And then there's the bank transfer." He showed me another page. $500,000. Deposited 2 days after my surgery. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Brooks leaned back. "Your son made a lot of mistakes, Mr. Morrison. He got greedy. He got sloppy. And now we have enough to put him away for a long time." I looked down at my hands. Old hands. Scarred hands. "Detective," I said slowly, "did my son ever love me?" The question hung in the air. Brooks was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. "I don't know, sir," he said, "but I know he didn't respect you." I nodded. It was the answer I'd expected. Maybe the only honest answer there was. "The trial is set for 3 months from now," Brooks said. "Will you testify?" I looked at my hands again, at the scar running along my side, at the life I'd given away without even knowing it. "Yeah," I said, "I will." Brooks studied me. "It won't be easy. You'll have to face him in court." "I know," I said, "but some truths need to be spoken." Brooks stood closing the folder. At the door he paused. "Your son is going to prison, Mr. Morrison. The evidence is too clear." I nodded. "Good," I said quietly. He left. The house felt colder. 3 months felt like 3 years. But when the day finally came, I was ready. Or at least I thought I was. The courtroom was colder than the rain outside. I stepped through the heavy doors of the Cook County Courthouse and felt every pair of eyes turned toward me. The gallery was packed. Reporters, strangers, people who'd read about the case in the papers. At the front of the room behind the defense table sat my son. Caleb wore a dark suit. His hair was neat. He looked normal, respectable. He looked like a liar. Judge Helen Crawford sat at the bench, silver-haired and stern. Prosecutor Carolyn Turner stood at the lectern, her posture sharp and unforgiving. And behind me in the second row sat Jonathan Langford. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. Turner began, "Your Honor, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. Emails, text messages, bank records. All of it points to a deliberate, calculated scheme to defraud the defendant's own father." She nodded to Dr. Stone, who rose from the witness stand. "The defendant was never sick," Dr. Stone said clearly. "He fabricated his medical records. He bribed a clinic technician. He manipulated his father into believing his life was in danger." A financial expert followed. "The money was used for luxury purchases, a BMW, a trip to the Bahamas. The defendant did not use a single dollar to pay medical bills." The courtroom murmured. Then Turner turned to me. "The prosecution calls Arthur Morrison to the stand." My legs trembled as I stood. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Turner approached. "Mr. Morrison, why did you agree to donate your kidney?" I looked at the jury, 12 strangers who would decide my son's fate. "Because he was my son," I said, "and I loved him." "Do you still love him?" I was silent for a long time. I looked at Caleb. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I love the son I thought I had," I said quietly. "But that son never existed." The courtroom went still. Patrick Hayes. Caleb's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client made a terrible mistake under financial pressure." Turner cut him off. "A mistake, or a 6-month plan to deceive and exploit his own father?" Caleb shot to his feet. "Your Honor, I was desperate." Judge Crawford's voice was ice. "You made a choice, Mr. Morrison, a calculated and cruel one." Then she looked at me. "Mr. Morrison, would you like to address your son directly?" I stood. I stepped down from the witness stand. I walked to the center of the courtroom and stood in front of the defense table, and I looked my son in the eyes. "Caleb," I said, "I gave you life twice. Once when you were born, I held you in the delivery room. I counted your fingers. I promised I would protect you forever. And once when I gave you my kidney, except I didn't give it to you. You took it. You looked at your father and saw dollar signs. You didn't see the man who worked 2 jobs to put you through college. You didn't see the man who sat alone for 5 years after Penelope died, hoping you'd call. You just saw an old fool, an old man you could use and throw away. Maybe I was a fool, but you, Caleb, you're not my son." The courtroom was silent. Judge Crawford spoke. "Caleb Morrison, you are found guilty of fraud, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit unlawful organ transaction, and falsification of documents. I sentence you to 10 years in federal prison, no parole." The bailiff moved forward. Caleb's hands were placed in restraints. He looked back at me one last time, but I had already turned away. Jonathan's hand rested on my shoulder, and I did not look back, because some people are not worth a second glance. When I walked out of that courthouse, I knew one chapter had ended, but I didn't know that the next chapter would be the one most worth living. 1 year later, spring came to Chicago. The trees along Lake Michigan bloomed pale green. Sunlight poured through the windows of the Langford estate, warming the study where I sat with 3 children gathered around a table covered in textbooks. "Grandpa Arthur," Lily said, tapping her pencil on a math problem. "I don't understand this one." I leaned over, patient and steady. "Let's walk through it together." Noah was doodling in the margins. Grace was already 2 chapters ahead. They called me Grandpa Arthur. I wasn't their grandfather by blood, but I was theirs all the same. Jonathan appeared in the doorway, smiling. Arthur cared for a walk. We strolled along the lake, the water calm and endless. Jonathan moved slowly, but his color had returned. He was alive, healthy, whole. "You gave me more than a kidney, Arthur," he said quietly. "You reminded me what family is supposed to be." "You gave me a family when I had no one," I replied. When we returned, there was a letter waiting for me on the hall table. I recognized the name on the envelope immediately. Caleb Morrison. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I handed it to Jonathan. "Some doors should stay closed," I said. Jonathan didn't argue. He simply nodded and set the letter aside. "Do you ever regret it?" Jonathan asked. "The donation." I looked out at the lake. "I regret trusting the wrong person, but I don't regret kindness. That kidney saved your life. That was worth it." That evening we gathered for dinner. 3 generations. Laughter. Stories. I looked around the table and felt something I hadn't felt in years. I belonged. This isn't the family I was born into, I thought. But this is the family I chose. And they chose me. That night I stood in front of the mirror. The scar had faded, but it was still there. A thin line across my side. Scars remind you of what you survived, I thought. And I survived. Before this story ends, I want to tell you something. Love is not measured by blood. It is measured by respect. I spent 65 years believing that family meant biology, that a son would love his father because they shared DNA. I was wrong. Caleb didn't lose a father because I walked away. He lost a father because he walked away first, from honor, from gratitude, from humanity. But me, I found something better. I found people who valued me not for what I could give them, but for who I was. If you've ever felt used by someone you loved, know this. Walking away is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. And you deserve that choice. That evening, as I sat at dinner with the Langford family, I realized something. Home isn't where you're born. Home is where you're valued. And I was home. Looking back now, I see the mistakes I made. I see the signs I ignored. I see the love I gave to someone who never deserved it. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're on a hospital bed to realize that blind trust can cost you everything. Don't give pieces of yourself to people who see you as spare parts. Here's what I learned. Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by respect. Caleb and I shared DNA, but we never shared values. Jonathan and I share no blood, but we share something deeper. Gratitude, dignity, and faith. God brought me to that operating table for a reason. Not to save my son, but to save a man who would remind me what family truly means. God allowed me to lose everything so I could find what I'd been missing, all along, a place where I belong. And when I thought I had nothing left, God gave me 3 grandchildren who call me Grandpa Arthur, not because they have to, but because they want to. Grandpa stories like mine aren't rare. Every day elders are used, discarded, and forgotten by the very people they sacrificed for. But Grandpa stories can also be stories of redemption. Stories where the broken find strength. Stories where God turns betrayal into blessing. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed by family, know this: you are not alone. God sees you. And walking away from toxicity is not abandonment, it's survival. Don't be like me. Don't wait for a scar to teach you what words should have. Protect your heart, set boundaries. And remember, the people who truly love you will never make you feel like a transaction. These grandpa stories teach us that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to choose yourself. And it's never too late to find the family you were meant to have. God didn't waste my pain. He used it to lead me home. If this grandpa story has touched your heart, please leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved? How did you rebuild? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that they are valued. And if you believe in second chances, subscribe to this channel. Let's build a community where kindness wins and the broken become whole. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you on your own journey home.